Hello everyone, we'll be going over again the virtuous woman in Proverbs. We are on Proverbs 31 and verse 26. Proverbs 31 and verse 26, and it says, "She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness." She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue the law of kindness. So we're just going to get a few texts to expound upon these attributes of the virtuous woman or the virtuous man. We ought to be virtuous men and women for God. And these are the people that you ought to marry. Those that have a mouth full of wisdom. Those that have a tongue that speaks nothing but kindness. The law of kindness. Ecclesiastes 7 and verse 25, it says, "I applied mine heart to know and to search and to seek out wisdom and the reason of things, and to know the wickedness of folly, even of foolishness and madness." So this is the virtuous woman, friends. She applies her heart fully to knowing, having an understanding, to searching, to seeking out wisdom. This is how she was able to open her mouth with wisdom, is because she sought for it. She sought to know it back and forwards, and she searched it with all of her heart. The reason of it, and to know wickedness and folly, even of foolishness and madness. So as she sought out wisdom, then it was revealed to her wickedness. Then it was revealed to her foolishness and madness, so that she doesn't take down that path. Have you ever heard someone say that those that know the dollar bill, right? They're not going to study counterfeit dollar bills. They are going to study the real dollar bill. You search the truth and error will reveal itself. You don't search for the wickedness. You don't search for folly. You don't search for foolishness. You don't search for madness. You search for truth, and these things will reveal themselves. You'll be able to distinguish between them because you know the truth. And this is the virtuous woman. 1 Samuel 3:19, it says, "And Samuel, he grew, and the Lord was with him, and he did not let none of his words fall to the ground." He did not let his words fall to the ground. How so? Because he also searched. He also knew and sought out wisdom. And it was because of his searching of wisdom and receiving the knowledge of wisdom that his words did not fall to the ground. Just like the Proverbs woman, she opened her mouth with wisdom. So what is this wisdom that she opens her mouth with? What is she speaking? Besides, obviously, the context is wisdom, wise words. 1 Corinthians 1 and verse 30. 1 Corinthians 1 and verse 30, it says, "But of him are ye in Christ Jesus, who of God is made unto us wisdom and righteousness and sanctification and redemption." So when it says she openeth her mouth with wisdom, she openeth her mouth with Christ. Christ was made unto us wisdom. So the words that she speaks is none other than the words of Christ. It is Christ speaking through her. She is careful with her words. She speaks wisdom. She speaks Christ. Every conversation, even at the lunch table, the dinner table, the breakfast table, she cannot help but speak the words of Christ. Speak truth as it is in Jesus. Glorify his name. This is the woman that you ought to marry. The man that you ought to marry. If their conversations are not heavenward, they are not the ones to marry. So that was just a little bit about the wisdom that she speaks. But the verse also continues to say, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. Kind words, friends. Is she nice? Does she have kind words, friends? Does she speak kindly to her family? Does she speak kindly to her friends? Does she speak kindly to the church members? Is everything that she has in her conversations done with kindness? Because that is a characteristic of Christ, a pattern after Christ. Look at a few texts on the kindness. 1 Corinthians, we know this very well. 1 Corinthians 13 and verse 4, it says, charity or love suffereth long and is kind. Then it says, charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up. And if we read in the Bible, we know that God is love. So if we replace God with charity here, look how it reads again. It says, God suffereth long. God is kind. God envieth not. God vaunteth not himself. God is not puffed up. And so on. You get the point, friends. She has God resonating within her heart. So nothing but wisdom and kind words can spew out of her mouth. Ephesians chapter 4 in verse 32. And be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. Friends, she gets her words, she gets her kindness from the character of God. And lastly, that text in Ephesians 4 and verse 32 reminded me, because it said, be kind one to another. Then it says, tender-hearted. That reminds me of 9th volume of the Testimonies, page 189, paragraph 4. It says, if we would humble ourselves before God and be kind and courteous, tender-hearted, pitiful, there would be 100 conversions to the truth, where now there is only one. And you know that one? Not only Christ, our perfect example, but those that follow Christ. The virtuous woman is that one out of 100. The virtuous man is that one out of 100, so that you know for assuredly that this is the person, because that is 1 out of 100 that has the kindness, that has the character of God, that is not puffed up. Friends, I want to encourage you to continue to seek out God in His Word as the virtuous woman does, so that when we go to speak to others, that nothing but wisdom and kindness flow from our words. God bless you, and I hope that you have a blessed Sabbath.